In the winter of 1944, the Western Front appeared to be stabilizing. Allied forces had broken through Normandy, liberated Paris, and were advancing steadily toward Germany's western borders. General Dwight D. Eisenhower's Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, SHAF, believed the German army was near collapse. Yet Adolf Hitler, refusing to accept defeat, launched one final major offensive in the west, a surprise counterattack through the Ardennes forest. This operation, known as Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine, would come to be called the Battle of the Bulge. It was the largest and bloodiest battle fought by the United States in World War II. Amid the confusion and chaos, one commander's leadership, speed, and audacity would alter the course of the campaign: General George S. Patton Jr. and his U.S. Third Army. The situation, December 1944. By December, Patton's Third Army had been driving eastward through France, pushing into the Saar region. His forces were exhausted but confident. They had liberated hundreds of towns, captured thousands of German prisoners, and proven that Patton's reputation for relentless advance was well earned. Then, on December 16, 1944, the German army struck back. Under the cover of fog and snow, nearly 200,000 German troops and 1,000 tanks attacked through the Ardennes, targeting the lightly defended American lines in Belgium and Luxembourg. The surprise was total. The German goal was ambitious: split the Allied armies, capture Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. Within days, the German advance created a massive bulge in the Allied front, hence the battle's name. Entire American divisions, such as the 106th Infantry, were surrounded and destroyed. The town of Bastogne, held by the 101st Airborne Division and elements of the 10th Armored Division, became the focal point of the German assault. By December 20, Bastogne was completely encircled. For Eisenhower and his commanders, the crisis was immediate. If Bastogne fell, the German spearhead could drive deeper toward the Meuse River. Something, or someone, had to respond quickly. Patton's preparation and insight. Patton, commanding the Third Army in Lorraine, was far to the south. His army was preparing for a continued push into the Saar region. Yet Patton had long anticipated that the Germans might counterattack. His intelligence officers had reported unusual enemy movements, and he had instructed his staff to prepare contingency plans. On December 19, 1944, Eisenhower called a high-level conference at Verdun. Present were senior Allied commanders, Bradley, Hodges, and Patton. The situation was dire, and Eisenhower asked what reserves could be shifted north to stem the German advance. Patton's reply stunned the room. While other commanders estimated days or weeks to reposition their forces, Patton said he could attack the southern flank of the German offensive in 72 hours. Eisenhower asked how that was possible. Patton calmly explained that his staff had already drafted 3 contingency plans: one for an attack east, one for an attack northeast, and one directly north. All he needed was the order. Patton's readiness was not luck. His staff, particularly Major General Hugh Gaffey, Colonel Paul Harkins, and the brilliant operations officer Colonel Oscar Koch, had anticipated this exact scenario. Orders were already being transmitted to units to prepare for a rapid pivot north. The turn north, transforming an entire army's direction in winter conditions, was an extraordinary challenge. The Third Army was spread across a broad front, deeply engaged in offensive operations against fortified German lines. Moving north required not just road marches but the reorientation of supply lines, artillery, and communications, all while maintaining contact with the enemy. Between December 19 and 22, Patton ordered his 3 corps, under Major General John Milliken, to disengage and begin the 90-degree turn toward Bastogne. The 4th Armored Division, the 26th Infantry Division, and the 80th Infantry Division were selected to spearhead the relief effort. They would have to travel over icy roads, in constant snow, across hundreds of kilometers of hostile territory. Patton's orders were precise and direct. He emphasized speed and initiative. "We've got to get those men out of Bastogne," he said. "We'll attack with everything we've got." The weather was brutal. Snow and fog reduced visibility to near zero. Supply trucks skidded on ice. Men froze in their foxholes. Yet the Third Army moved with extraordinary coordination. Patton's logistical officers worked around the clock to ensure fuel and ammunition were pushed forward. His engineers kept roads open despite constant snowfall. The siege of Bastogne. While Patton's army was moving, Bastogne was enduring one of the most desperate sieges of the war. The 101st Airborne, commanded by Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, had been cut off since December 20th. Supplies were running low, casualties were rising, and German artillery pounded the town day and night. On December 22, German officers delivered a surrender ultimatum. McAuliffe's famous one-word reply, "Nuts," became a symbol of American defiance. The paratroopers held firm, repelling repeated attacks by German panzer divisions. In Verdun, Eisenhower was relying entirely on Patton. The relief of Bastogne was now the highest Allied priority. If the Third Army failed, the German offensive could not be contained. The march and the attack. On December 23, the weather finally cleared. Allied aircraft, grounded for days, now took to the skies. Bombers struck German supply lines and armored columns, while C-47 transport planes dropped desperately needed supplies to the defenders of Bastogne. At dawn on December 24, Patton's lead elements of the 4th Armored Division, commanded by Major General Hugh Gaffey, began their attack northward from the town of Arlon toward Bastogne. Their route passed through villages like Martelange and Bigonville, narrow, icy roads that forced tank columns to advance in single file. The resistance was fierce. German units from the 5th Parachute Division and 26th Volksgrenadier Division fought to block every approach. Patton maintained constant communication with his corps commanders, often by radio and sometimes in person. He drove through the snow to the front lines, urging speed and aggression. "We're going to relieve Bastogne," he told his men. "We'll get there, or we'll die trying." Christmas at the front. By December 25, 1944, progress was slow but steady. The 4th Armored Division's Combat Command R, led by Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, pushed to within a few miles of Bastogne. German panzer counterattacks threatened to cut the column off, but Abrams' tanks held firm. That Christmas night, Patton issued a message to his troops, "Merry Christmas to you all. This is not the kind of weather I'd choose, but we're with the finest soldiers on earth, and we will win." He also famously ordered the Third Army chaplain, James O'Neill, to compose a prayer for clear weather, a reflection of Patton's unique mix of faith and determination. When the skies cleared the next day, Patton credited the prayer the breakthrough. On December 26, 1944, the 4th Armored Division reached the southern edge of Bastogne near the village of Bastogne. At 1650 hours, Sergeant Oswald D. Butler of Company C, 37th Tank Battalion, drove his Sherman tank into the American perimeter. The siege was broken. Soldiers from both sides embraced and cheered. Relief had finally come. Patton's relief of Bastogne became one of the most celebrated achievements of the European campaign. In less than a week, his army had disengaged from one front, pivoted 90 degrees, and fought through harsh winter conditions to rescue an encircled force, all while maintaining pressure on the enemy. Aftermath and strategic impact. The German offensive lost momentum after the failure to capture Bastogne. As Patton's forces continued to push north, and Montgomery's units counterattacked from the north, the bulge in the Allied line was gradually erased. By January 1945, the front had been restored. The Battle of the Bulge cost the U.S. Army more than 80,000 casualties, the highest toll of any campaign in Europe. German losses were even greater, around 100,000 men, along with vast quantities of tanks and vehicles they could not replace. The offensive exhausted the Wehrmacht's remaining reserves and ensured that Germany would never again launch a major attack in the West. For Patton, the campaign reaffirmed his reputation as one of the most dynamic field commanders in modern warfare. His rapid planning, logistical precision, and audacious maneuvering demonstrated mastery of operational art. Military historians have since noted that his 90-degree turn and advance to Bastogne remain among the most remarkable feats of movement warfare in the 20th century. Leadership and command style. Patton's success at Bastogne was no accident. It was the culmination of his philosophy of leadership, preparation, discipline, and aggression. He demanded that every officer anticipate the enemy's next move and be ready to act instantly. His insistence on constant movement, even in the worst weather, ensured that the Third Army was never paralyzed by indecision. He also understood morale. His speeches, though blunt and often controversial, inspired confidence. Soldiers who served under him described him as demanding but deeply respected. He led from the front, often appearing in the snow-covered battlefields wearing his trademark helmet and revolvers. Patton also displayed remarkable logistical insight. His chief of staff, General Hobart Gay, and G4 officers coordinated thousands of trucks and supply convoys across frozen roads. Fuel dumps were relocated overnight. Field hospitals were set up to handle massive casualties. The ability to shift an entire army in days was a triumph of organization as much as of courage. Relations with high command. Throughout the campaign, Patton maintained complex relationships with other Allied leaders. Eisenhower valued Patton's results but often worried about his outspoken behavior. Bradley, who commanded the 12th Army Group, both admired and struggled to control his fiery subordinate. Yet, during the Bulge, even Patton's critics acknowledged that his decisiveness saved the Allied position. British Field Marshal Montgomery, who commanded the northern sector, later claimed that his own counterattack was decisive, a statement that caused friction among the Allies. But Eisenhower and most historians credit Patton's speed and initiative as the key factor that prevented disaster. German perspective. From the German viewpoint, the Battle of the Bulge was their last gamble. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt and General Hasso von Manteuffel commanded skilled panzer formations, including the 2nd Panzer Division, Panzerlehr Division, and 116th Panzer Division. They initially achieved surprise, but logistical shortages, Allied air power, and stiff American resistance halted their progress. Patton's counterattack placed additional pressure on their southern flank, forcing them to divert forces from the main drive toward the Meuse. German commanders later admitted that the unexpected speed of the American response, particularly from Patton's direction, contributed to the offensive's collapse. Winter hardships. The conditions under which Patton's troops fought were among the harshest of the European war. Temperatures plunged below freezing, weapons jammed, and vehicles broke down in the snow. Soldiers suffered frostbite and exposure. Despite this, the Third Army maintained operational tempo. Engineers cleared roads and built bridges under fire. Artillery units maintained continuous barrages to support advancing infantry. Medical teams evacuated thousands of wounded through treacherous terrain. Quartermasters rationed food and fuel with mathematical precision. The coordination reflected Patton's doctrine of speed and pressure. Keep the enemy reacting. Never let him rest. Outcome and legacy. By mid-January 1945, the German salient had been erased. The U.S. First and Third Armies met near Houffalize, closing the pocket. The Allied front stabilized, and the path into Germany was reopened. The failure of Hitler's last offensive marked the beginning of the end for the Third Reich. General George S. Patton's role in this outcome was decisive. His operational foresight, rapid planning, and execution under extreme conditions turned potential catastrophe into strategic victory. Eisenhower later remarked, Patton's Third Army was the hammer that broke the German attack. In post-war assessments, the U.S. Army Center of Military History described the Third Army's movement as a masterpiece of staff planning and command execution. The German Chief of Staff, General Gunther Blumentritt, admitted after the war, Patton was the most feared Allied general on the Western Front. His speed and boldness kept us off balance. Conclusion. The Battle of the Bulge was more than a test of military strength. It was a test of leadership, endurance, and will. In that frozen landscape of 1944, when Germany sought one last chance to alter the war's course, George S. Patton demonstrated what decisive command could achieve. Within days, he had reoriented an entire army, crossed vast distances in deadly weather, and broken through to save an encircled force. His achievement at Bastogne remains one of the defining moments of Allied success in Europe. Patton's legacy endures not only because of his victories but because of the standard he set for military leadership: anticipate, act, and never yield to hesitation. His winter counterattack stands as one of the finest examples of operational art in modern history, proof that speed, clarity, and resolve can turn even the bleakest situation into victory.